Mr. Patterson, you died in that factory fire on March 15, 1987. You were trying to save your co-worker Jenny, but the ceiling beam fell on both of you. Your last words were, "Tell my wife I love her." But nobody heard you say that because you were alone with Jenny when it happened. The studio fell into a deathly silence. Host Michael Patterson's face went white as he stared at the 7-year-old girl sitting across from him under the bright television lights. His hand instinctively moved to his chest, where his heart was pounding so hard he was sure the audience could hear it through his wireless microphone. It had started as just another episode of Truth or Hoax, Patterson's popular daytime talk show that specialized in debunking paranormal claims. For 3 years, he'd built his reputation on exposing fraudulent psychics, fake ghost hunters, and what he called reincarnation fantasies. Today's show was supposed to be his biggest triumph yet, a live televised takedown of a family claiming their daughter remembered a past life. "Ladies and gentlemen," Patterson had announced to the studio audience just 20 minutes earlier, his trademark confident smile beaming into the cameras. "Today we're going to witness the end of one of the most persistent myths in human history. I'm going to prove, once and for all, that reincarnation is nothing more than wishful thinking, false memories, and elaborate hoaxes designed to fool the desperate and the gullible." The audience had applauded enthusiastically. Patterson thrived on these moments. The anticipation, the drama, the inevitable satisfaction of revealing truth from fiction. He'd spent weeks preparing for this episode, researching every detail he could find about the guest family, looking for inconsistencies, preparing gotcha questions that would expose the fraud. 7-year-old Emma Sullivan sat in the guest chair, her small legs dangling from the adult-sized seat, looking remarkably calm for a child about to be interrogated on national television. Her parents, Tom and Lisa Sullivan, sat in the front row of the audience, their faces showing a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Now, Emma," Patterson had begun, leaning forward with his practiced interviewer's posture, "your parents claim you've been talking about a past life since you were 3 years old. They say you remember being someone else before you were born. Isn't it more likely that you're just repeating things you've heard adults say? Or maybe something you saw in a movie?" Emma had looked at him with startling directness for such a young child. "I know you don't believe me, Mr. Patterson. Most grown-ups don't. But I remember everything about my life before this one. I was a man named Robert Patterson. I worked at Patterson Steelworks. I had a wife named Margaret and 2 sons, Michael and David." The host had chuckled, though something in the child's unwavering gaze made him slightly uncomfortable. "That's quite a coincidence, Emma. Patterson is my last name too. Are you sure you didn't just hear that somewhere?" "It's not a coincidence," Emma had replied matter-of-factly. "You're my son. My eldest son, Michael. You were born on September 23, 1965, at St. Mary's Hospital. You had a birthmark on your left shoulder shaped like a crescent moon." Patterson's confident smile had faltered slightly. His birth date wasn't public knowledge, and the birthmark was something only his closest family members knew about. But he'd recovered quickly, attributing it to lucky guessing or perhaps information the family had somehow researched. "That's very creative, Emma, but anyone could have looked up my birth date online. And birthmarks are common. You'll have to do better than that if you want to convince me." It was then that Emma had delivered the words that would haunt Patterson for the rest of his life. Words about his father's death, about last words spoken to no one, about details that existed nowhere in any public record or family story. Now, sitting under the harsh studio lights with 3 cameras focused on him and a live audience of 200 people watching his every reaction, Patterson felt his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. His father, Robert Patterson, had indeed died in a factory fire in 1987. He had been trying to save a co-worker named Jenny Morrison, and those last words, "Tell my wife I love her," were words Patterson had never heard before. Words that no one could have known because, according to the official reports, both Robert and Jenny had died alone in a section of the factory, where no one else could have witnessed their final moments. "How?" Patterson whispered, his voice barely audible through his microphone. "How could you possibly know that?" Emma's expression softened, and for a moment, instead of a 7-year-old girl. Patterson saw something else in her eyes, something ancient, familiar, and heartbreakingly paternal. Because I lived it, son. I experienced every moment of that fire. I felt the heat, the smoke in my lungs, the terror of knowing I wasn't going to make it out. But more than anything, I felt the desperate need to let your mother know how much I loved her, how much I loved you and David. Those words, they were the most important thing in the world to me in that moment. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every nuance of the unprecedented scene unfolding before them. In the control room, the director was frantically signaling for commercial break, but Patterson waved him off. This was too important. Too real to interrupt. The beam that killed us weighed over 2 tons, Emma continued, her child's voice carrying an emotional weight that seemed impossible for someone her age. It crushed my legs first. I couldn't move, couldn't escape. Jenny was unconscious beside me. I held her hand as the fire got closer, and I kept repeating those words. Tell my wife I love her, hoping somehow someone would hear, someone would survive to carry the message. Patterson's eyes filled with tears as memories of his father flooded back. Robert Patterson had been a strong, proud man who'd worked at the steel factory for 23 years. He'd been a devoted husband and father, always putting his family first. The day of the fire, he'd been scheduled to leave work early to attend Michael's high school graduation ceremony. Instead, he'd stayed late to help train a new employee, Jenny Morrison, a single mother who'd just been hired and was nervous about learning the equipment. You blamed yourself, Emma said softly, her small hand reaching across the space between their chairs. After I died, you blamed yourself for not being there, for not somehow preventing it. You stopped celebrating your birthday because it was the day after the fire. You never told your mother about the guilt you carried. The audience sat in stunned silence, many wiping away tears as they witnessed this impossible reunion between father and son. Patterson looked out at his viewers, then back at Emma, his skeptical worldview shattering piece by piece. But I want you to know, Michael, it wasn't your fault. None of it was your fault. I made the choice to stay and help Jenny because that's who I was. That's who you raised me to be, actually, because you got that sense of responsibility from me, and I got it from my father, and he got it from his. It's who we are as a family. Patterson wiped his eyes, struggling to maintain his composure on live television. This is impossible. You're a 7-year-old girl. You're not my father. I know it's hard to accept, Emma said with infinite patience. But our souls don't have gender, Michael. They don't have age. They just have love, experiences, and the connections we make with other souls. I came back because I had unfinished business. Not with your mother. She knew I loved her. But with you and David. I needed you both to know that I was proud of you, that I never stopped watching over you. What about David? Patterson asked, his voice breaking. My brother David. What would you want him to know? Emma smiled. And in that moment, Patterson saw his father's smile so clearly it took his breath away. Tell him I'm proud of him for becoming a teacher. Tell him I know. He named his son Robert after me and that I'm honored. Tell him that the woodworking shop he built in his garage, I helped guide his hands when he was learning to use the tools. He always felt like someone was there helping him, didn't he? Patterson nodded, tears streaming down his face. David had mentioned that exact feeling multiple times over the years. The sense that their father was somehow present when he was working with wood, their father's favorite hobby. And tell him, Emma continued, that I was there the night his wife Sarah almost died in childbirth. I was the presence he felt in the hospital room, the voice that whispered, she's going to be okay, when the doctors weren't sure. I couldn't speak to him directly then, but I can now, through Emma's voice. The studio was electric with emotion. Camera operators were crying behind their equipment. The audience sat transfixed, witnessing something that defied explanation but felt undeniably real. Even the most cynical crew members found themselves believers in something greater than they'd ever imagined. There's something else, Emma said, her voice taking on an urgent quality. Something I need you to understand about life and death. What we call death is just a transition. It's like taking off a heavy coat when you come inside from the cold. The coat isn't you. It's just something you wore for a while. The real you, the soul, the essence of who you are, that continues. It learns, it grows, it loves. And sometimes, if the love is strong enough and the purpose clear enough, it comes back. Patterson looked directly into the camera, his journalist's instincts kicking in even through his emotional turmoil. If this is real, and I'm not saying it is, but if it is, what does this mean for all of us? What does it mean for how we live our lives? It means every moment matters, Emma replied with wisdom far beyond her years. Every kindness, every act of love, every choice to help someone else, it all continues beyond death. It means the people we love never really leave us, and the people we lose aren't really gone. It means there's purpose to everything, even suffering, because it helps our souls grow and learn. But why you? Patterson asked. Why did you get to come back with memories intact when others don't? I'm not the only one, Emma said simply. There are others, more than you might think. Some remember clearly like I do, others have just fragments, dreams, feelings, unexplained knowledge. The memories come back when there's something important left undone, when the love between souls is strong enough to bridge the gap between lives. As the show drew to a close, Patterson faced his audience with a completely different perspective than he'd started with. The man who'd built his career on debunking the supernatural found himself confronting evidence that challenged everything he thought he knew about reality. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice still shaky with emotion, I came here today planning to expose what I believed was a hoax. Instead, I may have discovered something that changes everything we think we know about life, death, and the connections between us. I don't have all the answers. I'm not sure anyone does. But I know what I've experienced here today, and I know it's real. After the cameras stopped rolling, Patterson spent another hour with Emma and her parents, asking questions, sharing memories, trying to process the impossible truth he'd been confronted with. The network executives were already talking about follow-up episodes, expert consultations, investigations into other similar cases. But for Patterson, the most important moment came when Emma hugged him goodbye. A simple gesture from a child to an adult, but one that carried the weight of a father's love reaching across the boundary between life and death. I'm proud of you, son, she whispered in his ear. I always have been, and I always will be. 3 weeks later, Patterson's investigation team had verified every detail Emma had shared about Robert Patterson's life and death. They'd contacted Jenny Morrison's family, who confirmed details about the fire that had never been made public. They'd spoken with former co-workers who remembered Robert's exact words and actions on his final day. Every fact checked out perfectly. The episode became the most watched in the show's history, sparking international debate about reincarnation, consciousness, and the nature of human existence. But for Michael Patterson, the impact was far more personal. He'd found his father again, and in doing so, he'd found a new understanding of life itself. That night, for the first time in 35 years, Michael Patterson celebrated his birthday. After all, he now understood it wasn't just the day after his father's death. It was the day his father had made the ultimate sacrifice to save another person's life, and that was something worth celebrating. What do you think about this? Incredible encounter? Could reincarnation be real? Or is there another explanation for what happened in that studio? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story made you question what you believe about life and death, give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories that challenge everything we think we know about reality.